Elegant music filled the ballroom. The CEO walked in, evening gown sweeping the floor, smile forced. Ahead, the German business partner extended his hand. "I heard you're married." Clara froze. Beside her, an assistant whispered, "If they know you're single, the deal collapses." She took a deep breath, turned around, eyes landing on a man mopping the floor in the corner, head bowed. "You please help me." "Help with what?" "Pretend to be my husband, just for tonight." He looked up, light reflecting in his blue eyes. "If you're certain you need this, I won't let anyone embarrass you." Clara Hale, 34 years old, CEO of Hale Industries, an international technology conglomerate. After a scandalous divorce 2 years ago, she became the Iron Woman in the media's eyes. But tonight, at the signing ceremony with a German corporation, she needed to appear with a husband to complete the deal, per the partners' cultural requirements. The German partners were traditional, family-oriented. They didn't trust single women in positions of power, viewing them as unstable or uncommitted. It was sexist, outdated, and completely real. Clara could fight it or work around it. Fighting meant losing a $50 million deal. Working around it meant one night of pretending. Her secretary had arranged for an actor to play her husband, but he canceled at the last minute. Food poisoning, allegedly. More likely, a better-paying gig. As Clara stood in the lobby, flustered, her eyes fell on the man mopping the floor in the corner. Evan Brooks, 37, single father, former mechanical engineer, now working part-time as a janitor to support his daughter Mia, 8 years old. Evan was cleaning near the buffet table. A drop of water splashed onto Clara's dress. She turned around. He apologized, bowed his head. In that moment, the assistant whispered, "If they discover you're single, the deal falls apart." Clara looked around, desperate, then suddenly asked, "Can you help me?" Evan was confused. "Me? Help with what?" "Pretend to be my husband, just tonight." He smiled slightly. "I've never been good at pretending, but if it means you don't have to bow your head, I agree." Something in his voice steadied her. Not pity, not judgment, just simple willingness to help. The gala proceeded. Evan appeared in an old suit. He remained mostly silent, just smiled, but every handshake, every glance made people believe he was real. When Clara nearly stumbled over a guest's question, Evan took her hand, answered in a calm voice. "My wife doesn't discuss work at dinner. She saves that for people she trusts." The table laughed appreciatively, and Clara looked up. For the first time in years, she felt someone was truly on her side. The evening continued with surprising ease. Evan had a natural grace that didn't come from money or training. It came from confidence, from having nothing to prove. When a board member asked what he did for a living, Evan answered honestly, "I work in building maintenance, keep things running." "Oh," the man's eyebrows raised, judgment clear. "Someone has to make sure the systems work," Evan continued smoothly. "I find it satisfying, fixing what's broken." Clara tensed, waiting for mockery, but Evan's directness disarmed people. He wasn't ashamed, wasn't defensive, just matter of fact. The German partner, Herr Schmidt, actually nodded approvingly. "Honest work, I respect that. My father was a plumber, built a fortune from nothing." Throughout the night, Clara noticed small things, how Evan pulled out her chair without being obvious, how he touched her elbow gently when guiding her through crowds, how he listened to conversations, really listened, before speaking. He didn't try to impress anyone, didn't name drop or boast, just existed beside her with quiet strength. At one point, a journalist approached, camera ready. "Mr. Hale, when did you two meet?" Clara panicked. They hadn't prepared a story, but Evan just smiled. "She helped me when I needed it most, and I've been grateful ever since." It was vague enough to be safe, but specific enough to sound real, because it was real in a way. She had helped him by asking, by trusting him with this bizarre request. As the evening wound down, Clara found herself actually enjoying the gala, something she'd never done before. Was it the successful business deal? Or was it the man beside her who asked nothing, expected nothing, just showed up? When they finally left the ballroom, Evan handed her the handkerchief she'd dropped. On it was a smudge of machine oil from his work earlier. Sorry, he said. Couldn't get it all off. Clara looked at the stain. Two worlds, briefly touching. Keep it, she said, as a reminder. Of what? That tonight actually happened. That someone showed up when I needed them. The handkerchief with machine oil stains, symbol of two worlds colliding. After the gala, Clara invited Evan and Mia to her penthouse to thank them. Mia ran around looking at the piano asking, Miss, do you ever smile? The question made Clara's throat tight. Evan apologized for his daughter's curiosity. Clara only replied, It's okay, maybe I should learn that again. They had dinner together. Simple noodles Evan cooked in her kitchen. Strange atmosphere but warm. Evan told his story. He used to be chief engineer at a defense satellite company, but left the industry after an accident killed his wife. A system he designed failed. He took full responsibility. Clara went silent. The man before her wasn't poor because he was lazy, but because he chose to atone. The apartment felt different with them there. Usually it was silent, sterile, like a museum. Now there was laughter, mess, life. Mia spilled juice on the white carpet, panicked. But Clara just laughed. It needed color anyway. Evan watched her, this CEO in her glass tower, playing with his daughter like they'd known each other forever. You're different here, he observed. Different how? Real. At the gala, you were playing a part. Here, you're just you. Maybe I needed permission to be just me. After dinner, Mia fell asleep on the couch. Evan carried her gently. Clara watched his careful tenderness with his daughter. She's lucky to have you, Clara said. I'm lucky to have her. After Sarah died, Mia was the only reason I got out of bed. Still is, most days. Sarah was your wife? Yeah. The accident, it wasn't just a system failure. It was catastrophic. 3 people died, including Sarah, who was visiting the facility that day. The investigation cleared me technically, but morally? He shook his head. I'll never be clear. That's why you do janitorial work. Penance. Purpose, I needed work that didn't require trust. Where if I failed, no one died. Mopping floors seemed safe enough. The next morning, media published photos of Clara with mysterious husband. Company stock rose, but she felt empty. Headlines everywhere. Ice Queen melts, CEO's secret marriage revealed. Her phone exploded with calls, board members congratulating her, investors expressing confidence. Everyone happier now that she was settled. It made her sick. When asked about it, Evan only said, I just wanted to help, but you don't really need me. She replied softly, I'm not sure anymore. The honest answer surprised them both. That evening, she went to find him at his poor neighborhood. Mia opened the door, smiling brightly. The building was run down, peeling paint, broken elevator, the kind of place Clara had never stepped foot in. But inside their apartment, it was clean, sparse, but loved. Mia's drawings covered the walls. A small kitchen smelled like something baking. Clara looked around the small room, saw on the wall a photo of Evan with a rescue team from 5 years ago. He'd been chief engineer who saved 40 lives in a factory explosion. She studied the photo more closely. Young Evan, covered in soot, standing with firefighters and other engineers. In the background, she could see the residential building. Her brother had lived in one of those apartments. She realized he was the one who prevented the explosion from spreading to the residential area where her younger brother had lived. That's you, she breathed. You're the engineer who stopped the chain reaction. Evan came up beside her and, how do you know about that? My brother lived in that residential complex. If the explosion had reached the fuel tanks like the initial assessment predicted, a lot of people would have died, including your brother. You saved him. You saved hundreds of people. I also designed the system that failed in the first place. 3 people died because of my mistake. 3 people died, 200 people lived. That's not equivalent, but it's not nothing either. Tell that to their families. I'm sure they've told you worse. He nodded slowly. They have. Repeatedly. I deserved every word. Clara sat on his threadbare couch. You've been carrying this for 3 years? Every day. Sarah was one of the 3. If I double-checked the pressure calculations, If I'd insisted on better materials, you can't if yourself to death, Evan. Trust me, I've tried. What do you mean? My divorce. My ex-husband cheated, but I blamed myself. If I'd been home more, if I'd been warmer, if I'd been different. But the truth is, he was going to cheat regardless, because that's who he was. How did you move past it? I didn't. I just got harder, colder, threw myself into work, became the ice queen everyone thinks I am. But you're not really. How would you know? Because ice queens don't invite janitors to penthouses. They don't laugh when kids spill juice. They don't look at me like I matter. The air between them shifted. You do matter, Clara said quietly. More than you know. Clara holding the old photo, seeing the name E. Brooks, chief engineer, understanding he wasn't someone to pity but to respect. Suddenly, news leaked. Clara hires fake husband to deceive shareholders. Media swarmed. Clara was suspended from her position. The first person to defend her was Evan. But she was angry. Did you tell someone? He went silent, hurt. No, but I won't let them tear you apart. They argued. Evan left. That evening, Clara was ambushed by reporters, nearly had a car accident. Evan appeared, pulled her from the road, took a hard impact to his shoulder. In the hospital, she cried, "Why do you keep doing this?" He answered, "Because you're the first person who said I was worth trusting." The leak had come from within her company, a board member named Richard Chen who wanted her position. He'd hired investigators to dig up everything about Evan, the fake marriage, the tragic past, the fall from grace. He presented it to the board as evidence of Clara's instability and poor judgment. The board called an emergency meeting, demanded her resignation. Clara sat at the head of the table, looking at these people she'd worked with for years. People who'd smiled to her face while planning her downfall. "I won't resign," she said calmly. "You lied to business partners," Richard said. "You brought a janitor to a formal gala. You've embarrassed this company." "I brought a decorated engineer who saved 40 lives. A man with more integrity than everyone in this room combined." "A janitor," Richard repeated. "A man," Clara shot back, "who showed up when I asked, who expected nothing in return, who has more honor in his little finger than you have in your entire body." She stood. "I made a mistake. I should have been honest from the start. But I won't apologize for knowing Evan. He's the best thing that's happened to me in years." "Then you're fired," Richard said smugly. "Fine, I'll start my own company, and I'll take half your engineers with me." She walked out, but victory was short-lived. The media was brutal. Her reputation was shredded. Investors pulled funding. She'd lost everything defending Evan. Was it worth it? She found him at the hospital sitting beside Maya, who was coloring. "I heard," he said. "I'm sorry." "Don't be, I should have done it years ago." "Done what?" "Stood up for what's right instead of what's profitable." Over the next week, something unexpected happened. Smaller companies reached out. Startups, innovators, people who admired what Clara had done. "You chose integrity over money," one CEO wrote. "That's rare. Let's work together." Within a month, Clara had more partnership offers than she could handle, and Evan designed the safety systems for every single one. They held a press conference together, not hiding, not pretending, just being honest. "Was your marriage fake?" a reporter asked. "The paperwork was," Clara said, "but the connection is real." "Are you together now?" "We're figuring that out." Evan took the mic. "I agreed to help Clara that night because I saw someone drowning. Not in water, but in expectations, in pressure, in loneliness." He looked at her. "I know what drowning feels like, and I know what it's like when someone pulls you out." The reporters went silent, actually listening for once. "Clara pulled me out of the hole I dug for myself. Reminded me I was more than my worst mistake, and I hope I did the same for her." After the conference, they walked through the city, Mia between them. "Did we just make things worse?" Clara asked. "Maybe, but at least we're making them honestly." The old stained handkerchief placed on the conference table, symbol of simple truth in a complex lie. Evan left the city, returned to his old workshop. Clara appeared weeks later, dressed simply, Mia with her. She said, I need someone to redesign the safety systems for my new project, and I need someone real. Evan smiled. You sure you're not afraid of janitors? I used to be afraid of many things. Now I'm only afraid of not starting over. They worked together. Mia helped to plant trees around the workshop. The wind turbines started spinning again, symbol of new hope. But starting over was harder than Clara expected. Her new company, Hale Innovations, operated from a renovated warehouse. Nothing like her old corner office with city views. The first morning, she showed up in jeans and a t-shirt. Evan did a double take. What? She asked. Just never seen you casual. Get used to it. No more galas. No more pretending to be someone I'm not. The transformation wasn't just clothes. It was everything. Clara learned to change her own tire when it went flat. Learned to brew coffee in a regular pot instead of an espresso machine. Learned that takeout could be just as good as five-star restaurants. More importantly, she learned to ask for help, to admit when she didn't know something, to value people over profit. They built the company from scratch. Clara handled business development. Evan led engineering. Mia became the unofficial mascot, drawing designs that inspired actual products. The work was hard, harder than anything Clara had done before. At Hale Industries, she'd had assistants, managers, entire departments. Now she was doing payroll herself, negotiating contracts, fixing the coffee maker when it broke. But she'd never been happier. One afternoon, a former colleague visited, looked around the modest space with barely concealed disdain. You gave up a corner office for this? No, Clara said. I gave up a prison cell for freedom. But the money was never mine. It was the company's, the shareholders. Everyone's but mine. She gestured around. This is mine. Every inch, every decision, every mistake, and every success. The colleague left shaking his head, probably thinking she'd lost her mind. But Clara didn't care. For the first time in her career, she was building something she actually believed in. Something that mattered. Evan watched her transform over the months. The sharp edges softened. The constant tension eased. She laughed more. Really laughed. Not the corporate fake laugh she'd perfected. She played with Mia without checking her phone. Ate lunch without working. Went home at reasonable hours. She was learning to live, not just achieve. One evening, working late on a design problem, she fell asleep at her desk. Evan draped his jacket over her shoulders. She stirred, looked up with sleepy eyes. Sorry, didn't mean to wake you. I wasn't sleeping well anyway. She stretched. Too many thoughts. About the company? About us. The word hung there. Us. What about us? Evan asked carefully. I asked you to pretend to be my husband. You agreed because I needed help, but what if I'm asking for a different reason now? What reason? Because I don't want it to be pretend anymore. Evan sat down across from her, heart pounding. Clara, you just blew up your life. Started over. Are you sure you're not just looking for stability? I'm sure I'm looking for you. There's a difference. How do you know? Because every important decision I make, I want your opinion. Every success I want to share with you first. Every failure, I want you beside me. That's not stability. That's love. The word landed like a bomb. Evan stood, walked to the window. I'm scared. Of what? Of failing you. Like I failed my wife. Like I failed those people who died. Clara came to stand beside him. You didn't fail them. You did everything you could. It wasn't enough. It never feels like enough when you care. But Evan, you saved 40 people. You're saving me every day just by being here. That has to count for something. What if I let you down? You will. I'll let you down too. That's what people do. We're imperfect, but we try. We forgive, we keep showing up. He turned to face her. Is that what you want? To keep showing up for each other? Every single day, for as long as you'll have me. He kissed her then, not the fake kiss for cameras, but real, honest, full of all the feelings they'd been holding back. When they pulled apart, Mia was standing in the doorway, grinning. Finally, she said, signing dramatically. I've been waiting forever. They both laughed, and Mia ran over for a group hug. A family. Not by blood or law, but by choice, the most real kind. The wind turbines starting up, light shining on their faces, representing the resurrection of both work and emotion. One morning, Clara found the old oil-stained handkerchief in a workshop drawer. She placed it on the desk, wrote, "If this time I ask you to pretend to be my husband, will you agree?" Evan answered, "No, because this time I don't want to pretend." Mia ran over, held up a drawing of three people. Family. Clara laughed, then cried. Above the workshop door, a new sign was hung. Hale and Brooks Innovations, where broken things fly again. Clara looked at him. "You saved me from embarrassment once. Now you're saving me from myself." Evan smiled. "I'm just doing what I did that first night, making sure you don't have to bow your head." 6 months later, they stood in a small courthouse. No gala, no media, just them, Mia, and a judge. "Do you take this woman?" the judge asked. "I do. For real this time." "Do you take this man?" "I do, and I'm not pretending." They kissed and Mia cheered, holding up another drawing. This one showed them with wings, flying. The company thrived, not because it was the biggest, but because it was built on genuine principles. Safety first, people before profit, honesty over image. Clients appreciated it, employees loved it. Competitors couldn't understand it. But Clara and Evan didn't need them to understand. They just needed to keep building. One evening, a year after the wedding, they sat on the workshop roof watching sunset. Mia was inside doing homework. "Do you regret it?" Evan asked. "Giving up everything?" "I didn't give up everything. I gave up the wrong things to get the right ones. Your old life was impressive. My new life is happy. There's a difference, babe." He pulled her close. "You know, when you first asked me to pretend to be your husband, I thought you were insane." "I was, but I agreed anyway." "Why?" "Because I saw something in your eyes. Desperation, yes, but also hope, like you were reaching for something you couldn't name. I was reaching for you. I just didn't know it yet." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sky turn purple and orange. "Evan?" "Yeah?" "If you could go back to that night, knowing everything that would happen, would you still agree?" He didn't hesitate. "Every time, 1,000 times, because that night changed my life too." "How?" "You gave me permission to stop punishing myself, to be more than my mistakes, to build instead of atone. You gave yourself that permission." "Maybe, but you helped me see it was possible." Below them, Maya opened the door, called up, "Dinner's ready. I made sandwiches." They climbed down, went inside to eat slightly lopsided sandwiches made with love. The final scene, three people walking out into light rain, wind blowing through the turbines, light reflecting on wet hair, symbol of faith reborn. Clara turned to Evan, rain on her face, smiling truly. "You know what I realized?" "What?" "That night when I asked you to pretend, I wasn't asking you to be someone else. I was asking you to be yourself, and that's what saved me. Being myself, boom. Being genuine in a world of fakes. Being kind without expecting reward. Being strong enough to be gentle. I just showed up. You showed up honestly. That's everything." They kissed in the rain while Mia laughed and danced around them. And above them, the sign creaked in the wind, "Where broken things fly again." Because that's what they'd done. Taken broken pieces and built something that soared. Three people stepping into the rain, turbines spinning behind them, light breaking through clouds, embodying resurrected faith. Sometimes the person you ask to pretend becomes the most real thing in your life. Clara asked a janitor to be her husband for one night, a desperate request from a desperate woman trying to save a business deal. It should have been simple, a transaction, a performance. But Evan didn't perform. He just showed up as himself. And in being himself, he showed Clara who she could be. Not the iron CEO, not the divorcee trying to prove something, not the woman performing strength while drowning in loneliness. Just Clara, flawed, trying, real. The business deal went through, but the real success was what happened after. When the pretending stopped and the truth began, they lost things. Clara lost her position. Evan lost his anonymity. Both lost the safety of their separate worlds, but they gained something more valuable, each other. And in finding each other, they found themselves. The moral isn't about fake marriages or business deals. It's about the courage to be genuine in a world that rewards performance, to ask for help without shame, to give help without expecting reward, to show up honestly even when it's easier to pretend. Evan could have done a bad job that night, could have made Clara look foolish, could have demanded payment. Instead, he treated her request with dignity, played the role with grace, and when it was over, asked for nothing. That's what broke through her walls, not grand gestures or expensive gifts, but simple, genuine kindness. And Clara? She could have forgotten him after that night, could have gone back to her corner office and never looked back. Instead, she saw him, really saw him, saw the hero under the janitor's uniform, the father protecting his daughter, the engineer still atoning, and she chose him. Again and again, until choosing him became as natural as breathing. Some love stories start with chemistry, with passion, with love at first sight. This one started with a desperate request and a kind agreement. But it became real when they both stopped pretending and started being. If you believe healing stories like this deserve to be told and not forgotten, please leave a comment and subscribe to Hidden Heart Stories. We tell the stories that should never be forgotten. Thank you for watching, and remember, sometimes the person you ask to pretend becomes the most real thing in your life. See you in the next story.